You're learning SQL, you're building dashboards and applying to potentially hundreds of jobs, and you're either not hearing back or you're making it to interviews and still not getting the offer. Either way, something isn't working and something is broken. I've been on the other side of the table. I've sat on analyst hiring panels, I've reviewed resumes, conducted technical interviews, and watched the entire process from the inside. And what I saw has changed how I think about everything, not just the interviews, but how candidates present themselves before they ever get in the room. And in this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain on how the hiring process actually works on the other side. I'll show you what panels are noticing about your materials before you ever get a callback. I'll tell you the moment that I watched a technically qualified candidate freeze during a basic Excel test and what I was actually evaluating because it wasn't the Excel. I'll also show you one thing that a candidate brought to an interview that was so good, I stole the idea for myself. And I'll share a story completely outside of data analytics that changed how I think about getting chosen. And it might change how you approach your entire job search. My name is Jeff. I've spent over 13 years working in healthcare analytics, currently as a business analyst consultant at a top Fortune 500 healthcare company. But here is what makes this different from most of the career advice out there. I haven't just been a candidate, I've been on the other side. I've reviewed the resumes, I've led the group panels, I've sat in deliberation rooms where the final decisions were met. And the patterns I'm about to share come from, in my experience, how hiring actually works, not just the theory behind it. Also, I'm on a mission to help 10,000 people break into data analytics, and I want you to be one of them. So if you're serious about landing your first data job, hit that subscribe button now. Now, here is the truth that most people don't want to hear. The evaluation starts way earlier than you think. It's from the moment on the team that someone opens your resume. Opinions are already forming. By the time it gets to the final rounds, this is where every candidate left has skills. The real filter isn't can they do the job, it's do we want to work with this person every day? And then that filter starts way before the interview begins. Now, every company is going to be handling hiring differently. What I'm sharing are the patterns that I've personally observed across multiple roles, teams, and industries and companies over the years. This isn't just one company's playbook, it's just what I've learned being on the other side of the table. So let me break this down. So here is something that most candidates don't think about. It's the interview doesn't start when you walk into the room. It starts when someone on the panel opens up your resume for the first time. So I've been in those situations where teams pull up resumes, video interviews, and then go through candidates before we ever meet them. Sometimes it's going to happen at someone's desk. Sometimes it's in a conference room. Sometimes we review them as they come in. But the point is that your resume, your portfolio, your video interview, that is your audition tape. Opinions are forming before you ever shake anyone's hand. So here is one pattern that I kept on seeing. Sometimes overqualified candidates with advanced degrees and technical skills beyond the scope of the role who never address why they wanted this specific role and to be at this specific company. It makes us feel like it's a stepping stone, and that's a red flag that panels actually talk about. Nobody wants to invest time training someone who's going to leave in 6 months for a better opportunity. But if they had just addressed it head on, if they just said, I know my background is advanced, but here's specifically why I want this role in this team is where I want to be, and it was genuine and believable, then it might have been a different conversation, but they didn't. So here is a quick win, and this is also just for red flags in general, but specifically for being overqualified or your background doesn't match the role perfectly, address it directly. Don't make the panel guess. Name the elephant in the room, explain your reasoning, and that alone puts you ahead of candidates who hope that nobody is going to notice. Now, let me tell you something that happens when someone walks in within the first 2 minutes and the panel knows this person is going to be good. It's going to come down to the details. It's a firm handshake. It's the genuine smile. It's looking at every person in the panel in the eyes when they answer questions, not just the person who answered the question or asked the question. It's sitting up straight. It's being calm and measured, even when they're nervous. And here's a small thing. One of my coworkers used to look at the tiny details from someone's cufflinks to iron shirts to a candidate's shoes. They said it's one of those details that shows up, that cares about how someone pays attention to details would care about. And it's most things that most people would overlook. And that's something that always stuck with me. It's looking for signs and proxies for what you're looking for in a candidate. And then a lot of different people are going to have their various things that they're looking at. But one of the best examples that I've seen with a candidate who just nailed it out of the park was they walked in with multiple copies of a printed portfolio. Because usually you want to walk in with printed resumes for everyone who you're going to be interviewing with. But what they did was it was a printed portfolio, full portfolio. And it was printed at Staples or somewhere like Staples. It was bound, it was professional. It had the resume, cover letter, project write-ups with explanations, certificates, and it included something that I've never seen in an interview before, and I thought it was brilliant. It included testimonials. So it was emails from colleagues, clients raving about their work. And think about that. They brought social proof into the interview. It said more about their character and their work ethic than any answer that they could have just came up on the spot with. From a marketing perspective, you can think of those as customer testimonials. So what I did was I started to save my own internal awards and positive feedback completely after that because of them, because it shows how big of an impression it left on me. So does this sound familiar? You walk into interviews with nothing but your answers. Meanwhile, someone else is walking in with receipts and they're showing, not telling that they're a better candidate. You want to start thinking more creatively in the ways that you can do that. Now, now that you've left the building, you want to think about, you think the interview is over, but it's not. So this is when the panel's going to regroup. Usually it's just the team and the boss, and the conversations start with something like, okay, what do you guys think? There's no formal scoring rubric that gets passed around. Some departments might have that, some teams might have that, but everyone's going to have their own ratings of what they were watching for, and then they're going to explain their reasoning. Then go through each candidate, usually with their resume in front of them, and then just talk and discuss. And then here's a part that might surprise you is when all the candidates are qualified, which they usually are at this stage, the conversation comes back to how well this person will work with others, especially the chemistry on the team. Can they communicate clearly? Are they proactive? Will they speak up when something is off? Or are they going to hold back and let the problems build? Those are work behaviors and they matter more than most candidates realize at this stage. Because sometimes someone in the panel will raise a concern. Maybe they felt something off within those candidates' answers, and then the group will talk through it. And then is it something that's something specific that everyone noticed, or was it just one person's read? It never goes unchallenged, but it's the fact that your interview presence leaves an impression, positive or negative, after you've left the room. And that's what most candidates don't think about. And then the final call is going to be the bosses. But it's informed by the team's input. And in my experience, the candidates who win are the ones where the whole team walks away from the interview saying, I like that person and I think they'll do a good job. Not, I was impressed by their credentials, not, it's simple. I like them and they can do the work in whatever variation that person can express it in. But that's a pattern that I found in a sentence that gets you hired. Now, let's talk about technical interviews because this is where it gets a little bit more real. I've seen what happens when someone gets hired based on a smooth interview, but actually can't do the work. It drags on the whole team until they eventually leave. It's a kind of experience that leads teams to start doing hands-on technical tests for every candidate. So once you've been burned, you don't skip that step again. And here's what I personally have set up previously. I've created escalating scenarios with different problems from easy, medium, and advanced. And in my head, I had a clear line. If they could get to this level, that's the bare minimum that they need. But here's the thing, the test wasn't just a test of their technical ability, it was a test of how they could handle pressure. How proactive are they? How resourceful are they? How do they communicate when they don't know the answer? The first person I ever gave a technical test to, I'll be honest, I felt so bad. Their resume, they said they could do this test. It was straightforward comparison in Excel, the kind that would make up a majority of their actual work. And they just froze, staring at the screen in silence. I remember sitting there thinking, just ask me something, please. Ask me what the requirements are. Ask me what is off limits. Ask me if you can just Google it. Anything. Please talk to me. But they just sat there in silence, which felt like an eternity. And that freeze isn't just a bad interview moment, it's a preview of how you handle real situations on the job. When you hit a wall on a project, are you just going to shut down? Or are you going to ask questions, get clarity on your constraints, get the actual requirements, and figure out the path forward? Now, you might be thinking, well, what if I just fake it? Look, there are a lot of people who have tried and people who've successfully gotten through those interviews. And the ones I'm thinking about are the people who use AI on video interviews and technical tests. And I'm sure you've seen the stories of people online getting caught during the second screen or when they get hired or having people feed them answers off camera. And for the whole thing, you just don't want to become that person because word does get around. Also, you don't want to build up that reputation because even if you somehow get past the interview, the work will expose you, and it typically does. So, if I could tell you three things I'm actually evaluating during the technical interview, here are what they are. First, can you establish what you can and can't do? Establish the boundaries, figure out the requirements, and then see what you have access to. This is a communication skill and it's also a technical skill. Second, are you resourceful when you hit a wall? Do you ask better questions or do you just go quiet? Third, can you walk me through your process and your thinking? Because on the job, explaining your process to a stakeholder or your boss, director, VP, C-suite executive, that matters just as much as the analysis itself. The candidates who handle the technical test the best aren't always the one who get the right answer the fastest. They're the ones who treat it like a collaboration and have better communication. Now, I want to take a quick detour here because one of the clearest lessons about getting chosen didn't come from my healthcare experience. It came from my hip hop dance experience. So for 4 years, I was the director of Common Ground, a competitive hip hop dance team out of UC Irvine. We grew from a no-name crew to a crew that competed with top groups. And these are top groups that you've probably seen on America's Best Dance Crew and World of Dance. I've had friends go through those shows, and those were who we were able to compete against. Every year we held auditions. And then through the last years that I was on the team, there would be hundreds of people would show up. We'd run group rounds, then we had individuals, and then my co-directors and I would sit in a room and then debate over the final spots. And I'll always remember the various people that we wanted to make it. So in my mind, there's one person where there was this one person, but they weren't at the technical dance level we needed them to be at. Not even close. But a few of us wanted them there already because they had the heart, they had the desire, and they chose our team specifically. This was their dream team. They could tell you why exactly they want to be there, but unfortunately, during deliberations, votes didn't go that way. They just weren't ready. And I agree, they weren't ready, but we still wanted them on the team for them to get the experience. So here's what they did after. They showed up to almost every dance workshop we held after. They went to dance classes to train and get better on their own. They didn't disappear. They kept putting themselves in front of us, communicating with us, getting to know us better, and getting better every single time. And then they auditioned again. They made the team, and then we were right about their commitment, and they stayed for years and years after. That pattern is the same thing I've seen across every context I've been a part of choosing people. The ones who ultimately get chosen are not always the most talented on day one. They're the ones who treat a no as not yet. They're the ones who keep showing up, who have great worth ethic and passion, and who make it impossible for decision makers to ignore them. So if you're rejected, think about that as data and not a verdict. It's something just to keep you to improve and to keep you moving forward. Now, The biggest thing that I want to talk about is getting hired is an attention game. It's not a skills game. It's not only a skills game. It's going to be a game of attention. Yes, you need the skills. You can't fake your way through a technical interview. Oh, you can, but you don't want to be that person. But one of the patterns that I keep seeing, especially with people I'm working with now, is someone will message 10 people on LinkedIn. They'll hear nothing and then walk away thinking networking doesn't work. That's not networking. That was a limited small test run. People that I've watched actually break through, they've sat in the rejection and the silence way longer than felt comfortable before anything started to move. And also with your portfolio, if it looks like a class project with a Kaggle dataset and some basic charts, that's going to blend in with the sea of generic portfolios of everyone else. And that's not because you aren't talented, it's because everyone else is building the same thing. Portfolios that stand out from the hiring side, they actually look like the person already works there. And now let me tell you a story that I've never forgotten. So, back when I was in college, inside my music industry class, my professor brought in a guest speaker. This person was an A&R rep at Capitol Records, one of the biggest labels in Hollywood. A&R reps are basically the talent scouts for the music industry. They get commissioned, they get paid these extravagant salaries, they discover artists and decide who gets a shot. It's one of the most competitive roles in entertainment and in general in the world. Their path, this person's path was anything but smooth. They lost a job at a major LA radio station. They kept getting rejected everywhere they interviewed, and then their savings were almost gone. With their last remaining money before they had to go back home to the Midwest or forget wherever they were and just get a regular job. What they did was book a trip to South by Southwest, the biggest music industry event in the country. This was their Hail Mary. If this didn't work, they'd have to go back to their parents' house that was farther away from the music industry and their dreams. So what they did was they did research. They found out which hotel the top executives were staying at. They went to that hotel and that lobby with their resume, their best work, and a CD of their best music that they've ever found. So this was their elevator pitch. They practiced it till it was airtight and spent the entire weekend walking up to anyone who'd listen, introducing themselves, delivering the pitch, and then handling rejection after rejection and just putting themselves out there. By the end of that weekend, they had over 10 job interviews lined up, and one of them was with Capitol Records. They didn't have a better resume than every other applicant. They didn't have better positioning. They just put themselves in a room where the decisions could be made faster instead of waiting for the system to let them in. If they had gone through the traditional path, going through a hiring board or going directly through the website, they would have not gotten the attention to be able to make it past and go directly to getting hired and then go through a bunch of the interviews. If you're in the middle of this right now, you're stuck in the application cycle and not hearing back, I built a community specifically for people in your position. It's called the Healthcare Analyst LAB, or the lab for short. Inside, we help with your resume, your portfolio, interview prep, and go all through the lens of what actually gets you hired from the other side of the table. Link is in the description below. Check it out if it makes sense for you. And if this video helped you see the process differently, hit that subscribe button now, because every week I share what I've learned over the past 13 years in healthcare analytics to help you land your data job. So until next time, career responsibly, and then watch this video next.